This is Visions Under Construction, a chance for our guests to share their visions and tell us what they're working on. For their continued support, we would like to thank Simwood, straight-talking, forward-thinking telecoms. Simwood.com. Why not make Cloudonics your communication partner? Go to cloudonics.io. You can find everything about the VUC at vuc.me, thanks to Bluehost, and thanks also to zipdx.com, the conference bridge, and to voxphone.com for local rate dial-ins. Actually, I'd like to add a disclaimer to that announcement. You will not find out everything about the VUC by going to vuc.me. One of the things you won't find out is that my Ring 2 video doorbell, which is just coming up on the 1-year warranty, has a battery that lasts about 15 seconds. So I've asked them how quickly they're going to send me a battery. And the telephone support of Ring is actually better than the mail support. So supposedly it'll happen. But that's how long are these batteries supposed to last? I mean, shouldn't they last for at least 2-3 years, or at least out of warranty? Then they can stick you with the $40 that it probably costs to replace it. Michael, you had a battery issue with your, what was it? It was an iRobot?
Well, the old vacuum cleaner thing was an iRobot. It was an early iRobot too, and it lasted a couple of years, and then eventually we just sort of it didn't want to charge anymore, and we said it's not worth replacing because it wasn't the shift in lifestyle, it wasn't the productivity boost that we had hoped for.
But the batteries actually cost a significant part of the, like 25% of the sale price or something, right? Or maybe not.
Yeah. If you really want. There's another sort of practical reality around our house with those robotic vacuums, and that was that it didn't scare the dogs because the dogs became accustomed to it. But our house has hardwood floors, or let's say wooden floors, with large area rugs, and they never really did a good job of navigating up onto the area rug,
right?
And then back down. They would oftentimes get hung up, and we would find it sort of trapped in the chair legs of a dining room chair.
No, not to put hours and hours of discussion about these things, but it's true that if anybody's considering buying one of those robots to vacuum, they really need a very simple setup. And as soon as you have a bunch of chairs and tables and stuff, and who doesn't? I mean, what do you have? Empty rooms? If you have rugs, throw rugs, I mean, anything that's not really simple, it's not going to work well. In our case, if we lift a couple of the chairs in the dining room, it will do the surface. It takes about an hour. It does a pretty good job vacuuming, though. And the other thing we have is a mopping from the same company, mopping and sweeping robot that we use on the first floor, because that's all very simple stuff. Anyway, long story short on that. Interesting. The doorbell. What else did I want to say about all these? Oh yeah, well, so Google pissed a few people off by having this automatic login thing on Chrome. Supposedly there is a flag setting in Chrome that will turn that off. It hasn't worked for me. I haven't seen anybody else complain, so maybe I'm the only one in the world who doesn't work for. But this brings me to something that I put onto vuc.me, which is the address of where you can download what they call Ungoogled Chromium. And these are, because Chrome is open source software, this is a version of Chrome for all the different OS or there's a source code too connected together. But it has nothing from Google. So first of all, it won't install any extensions, but it also doesn't have that login and has no real connection to Google. You can easily check your Gmail or get on all the Google properties, but it doesn't include that login and sync thing, which some people are upset about. I think there's a lot more things to be upset about, like the Facebook thing. Has anybody, any of you, you're all on Facebook, Has anyone used their phone number as an ID on Facebook? Because you've heard what happened there. Michael?
No. Nope.
Normie, what's the point of using a phone number? And that just says, here is a device that's in my pocket.
Yeah, exactly. James, do you use your phone number?
No.
No.
No, that's no point. But I use other services that do use the phone number, and the main one being WhatsApp, which is indeed owned by Facebook.
Yeah.
So
well, the drama of all this is, and I did, believe it or not, yes, me, the doubting Douglas or whatever the word, doubting Thomas.
The man who gets pissed off by everything,
By everything.
Oh,
disgruntled,
I'm really pissed off because
disgruntled old man. No, well, the fact is that I used a throwaway. Actually, it's a Google Voice number. But what's interesting about it is that it comes out that Facebook has sold those numbers to somebody to do advertising on SMS. Anyway, big surprise, right? I don't know what's going to happen. I wonder if Facebook is going to be as big and important as it is in 5 or 10 years. What does anybody think? Think they'll be around forever?
No.
Not forever. In 5 years, certainly, yes.
But as big as now or bigger?
Shrinking, I would say.
No, I think they're pretty stable at this moment in time. I mean, their cost base is not enormous, and the revenues that they make out of the advertising are considerable. So, yeah, they're going to be around for some time.
Sure.
I would say to you that they will continue to grow, but not on the basis of the Western world. They will continue to grow on the basis of penetration into other places. So if you look at their presence in, what was it, Thailand, where they basically are the internet, because everybody's access to the internet is on their phones and Facebook is all pre-installed.
Yeah, what happened?
I think that's nefarious.
You're right. A lot of these countries have operators that said, okay, you can get on Facebook we won't count the minutes. We won't count the data. You're right.
Yeah, zero rating. Yeah.
So, yeah. And there was it was that was John Oliver. Didn't he say that when he trashed Facebook?
Yeah. Well, that's a good example of what is known these days as a network slice, where somebody like Facebook can come along to the network operator and say, okay, if you zero rate my app, I'll give you some kind of recurring payment for that. And so the operator still makes money out of it. It's just that somebody who's not the end user pays for it. Another good example of that are the Amazon Kindle 3Gs that have a SIM card. The end user can pay for the SIM. If that makes sense.
Sure, and T-Mobile has done that over here. They did that with Pandora and a variety of other streaming music services in order to, when they did their uncarrier thing, they said initially, we're going to zero rate. Eventually, they included YouTube and Netflix. Now, T-Mobile, if you're a new customer, T-Mobile will actually give you a Netflix account and zero rate Netflix viewing.
Wow.
You can bet your bottom dollar that someone somewhere is paying for that, even though the end user isn't.
On the basis of there's no free lunch?
Indeed. There's never a free lunch.
I just had one, but that's beside the point.
You know, the whole thing, and people need to remember this. We all know it, but if you're not paying for it, you're not buying the product, you are the product.
Absolutely right.
So, James.
Anyway, what else can we talk about?
Well, you had a thing.
What are the other excitements?
Do any of you think that there's any underlying reality to this phone home thing with the super micro motherboards? The embedded microcontroller that was found, claims to have been found?
I got no idea what that is.
Relate the whole story, Michael. We were talking about this.
Yeah,
it broke. There's a story broke by Bloomberg yesterday, Bloomberg Business Week, that basically says that there's been a years-long investigation. It's been known for quite some time. You know, Supermicro owns about 90% of the world's server. Well, the majority of the world's server market, and they manufacture most of the motherboards in, and because they make motherboards for everybody's servers, right? And they manufacture in China. And the story goes that they were infiltrated by a tactical unit from the military over there, who engineered a very small little chip that looks like a power conditioning coupler. And they basically got this little chip installed into millions and millions of motherboards. And what the chip does is it's part of the low-level, like before the BIOS, out-of-band management capability for the motherboard. It basically phones home, and it allows people who have access to that home to reprogram low-level parts of the system. And it was claimed that Apple and Amazon and who else was it? There was one other big company.
US.
Well, lots and lots of people have conceptually motherboards that are impacted. And a next generation of this thing was actually made so small that it was able to be fit in the board amongst the layers of fiberglass that constitute the board itself, which means it's only detectable by X-ray. The article reads like a spy novel. It's a really good read, and Amazon and Apple have come out with strong arguments refuting it. And there's also a case made that the government investigators have known about this for quite some time and have not said anything because they were in fact investigating it. And there's some conjecture that they might have wanted to leverage it themselves if they understood its engineering.
And here's an article that's a little bit more recent. I'm trying to get it to a more palatable format. So to repeat,
Well, I'd say more recent. Well, the Bloomberg article was just yesterday as well.
Oh, okay. Well, this is referring to that, so it's slightly more recent. Anyway, it says the Chinese government agency sneaks. The analysis is Chinese government agencies sneaked spy chips into Supermicro servers used by Amazon, Apple, the U.S. government, and about 30 other organizations, giving Beijing snoops, blah blah blah, etc. And then they refer to the Bloomberg thing. So what they're saying is on the top of this, and you can find this, go to the register and search for it if you're interested. But basically, I like what the text is. Who's your money on? Bloomberg, Apple, Amazon, or Supermicro? Supermicro.
Well, and there's an interesting, almost direct connection to sort of our world here, in that this initially came to pass because of a company called Elemental Technologies. Or it didn't come to pass because of them, but they were initially involved, because Elemental was a company that Amazon bought to augment their Prime service, and they were a company that initially built what we used to call supercomputers, but they built dedicated systems for transcoding video, storing and transcoding video. So if you wanted to do your own YouTube, you would buy their hardware and software. And it was apparently engineers in their operation who were using Supermicro motherboards who first discovered this.
So what does anybody?
Well, you know what? These things are not that difficult to detect, as long as you monitor the network traffic that comes out the back end of your network.
How do you know these days where all your network traffic is supposed to go?
Well, if you have something like a MikroTik, then it'll tell you.
Yeah, okay. So let's go and connect to another random page on the web. And how many connections are we talking about? How many different IP addresses are we talking about connecting to? How many sessions are we opening?
60.
But
60
I would suggest you're probably much more interested in the data flows that are coming out of your computer at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're not using it.
Why would they bother at 3 o'clock in the morning? Just do it any other time.
You know, there is sort of a, how to put it, competence is rare enough, right? Consequently, it's hard to say, well, that anybody would have, anybody who's not completely paranoid would have a complete picture of all of the traffic across their LAN. Although conceptually they should, it doesn't always work out that way. I'm looking for independent confirmation of the fact that these things exist and had some active role that they played. I think that'll be interesting. But it's going to be, if it turns out to be true, it's going to be so bad for everybody named in that article. Except I don't know that there's so many people kind of implicated. I don't know that anything will come of it. It'll be a little bit like saying that we're going to, you know, I don't know, we don't jail people on Wall Street, right?
Right.
That seems to be the understanding. So I think you have the same thing going on here, that there'll be no recourse. However, it's interesting. It'll be interesting for companies that do not make motherboards in China, because all of a sudden their value will be improved.
You know, the scary thing to me, this is independent of this particular story, but recently there's been a lot of discoveries of malware that gets itself into the system and then arranges a thing so that even if you reinstall the OS, it's still there in the boot sector. Anybody heard of those?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's common.
Well, apparently that's become a really big thing.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, how do you defeat antivirus and anti-malware things? You just make it so that they can't even see you.
Right.
It's kind of frightening in its way, but it is where we're going. I mean, one thing that I noted last night, that BlackBerry have come up with a quantum computing proof security signing service, which they reckon is going to be proof against any quantum computing as it generates. And they reckon that 50 qubits is probably enough to start breaking everything, and they're at 10 now. So another few years, and all our cryptography are theirs.
Interesting that Dave Michaels, our friend Dave Michaels, posted on Twitter 21 hours ago, no way around it, either why am I trying to do this? Bloomberg's report is significantly wrong, at least as it pertains to Amazon and Apple, or Apple and Amazon have issued blatantly false denials. That's from John Gruber. And what caught my attention wasn't that, but the fact that Andre Reed, another friend of ours, who's one of whose Polycoms is sitting on my desk next to me, said, when I read this yesterday, my only response was, wow. I think a lot of people are having the response, wow. And God, it doesn't seem like Bloomberg would spend a year investigating something to come up with crap. So there must be something, some kernel of truth somewhere in this, don't you think? No,
it's very difficult to give credence either way, because we're completely in the dark.
Yeah, at this point, it's who do you trust?
Yeah,
and I don't think it's unlikely. It seems unlikely that Bloomberg just made this up.
Misinterpreted something, yeah.
Yeah, and because you're deep in the weeds of technology, there's a lot of interpretation of a lot of data going on here. So, but hey, somebody has shone a flashlight into a dark corner, and let's see what scurries, shall we?
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. It distracts us from the other stories of the day to an extent.
Actually, the BlackBerry one and a quantum computing digital signing is an interesting one, because they've got no way of knowing if it works, if they've got it right, until there are quantum computers around that are capable of doing what they're trying to defend against.
Yeah, in that regard, it's a little bit like a lot of these ID theft prevention services.
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, we will protect your ID. Well, how do you know? It still got stolen.
Yeah. Oh, and there was that guy, I can't remember the name of the company, but he was the CEO of the company, and he hired one of those trucks with a big sign on it to drive around New York City with his social security number on it, because he was so sure that his ID was protected. And sure enough, he was hacked.
Strange.
I tell you, to revisit the motherboard issue, for one thing, the thing that I admire about the story, because it does read like a good novel, is the graphics that Bloomberg is using, which are specifically what do they call them? Yeah, it's a server on a card that slides into a cage, right? It's not a traditional like pizza box form factor server. These are modular servers that you would have in data centers, and that sort of explains why it impacts a certain class of customer. But the presentation implies a lot about the impacted products because it's very graphic, and I appreciate the animation that they're doing and stuff like that. But it could have no bearing. It could just be a creative director's approach to this is what a server looks like.
It almost certainly is. I doubt that any of them really know what things look like. And if you said this is a server and you gave them a shoebox, then they'd probably believe it if it said Intel on the outside or something.
Do you remember Pons and Fleischmann? Pons and Fleischmann were the physicists from a small Midwestern university who claimed to have cold fusion down.
Yes. Yes.
And it was never repeated, and they skulked off in ridicule. These two, Jordan Robertson and Michael Riley, may be the next Pons and Fleischmann for all we know, but it's too early to say.
It'll be interesting to see how it pans out, and whether anyone actually admits that there is a problem, if there is a problem.
Well, I think
another matter.
I think it's more likely that some security researcher will make public whatever they found, because there must be tons of people on this right now.
Sure. One other thing that somebody mentioned, and it was Noel, our dev guy, Intel has had out-of-band management capability built into CPUs for a long time, and it caused a lot of outrage when it was first launched. But then things kind of went quiet and it evolved, and it's still there in a modified form. And it's a way for Intel to diagnose defective CPUs. So, and that's what we're talking about here. It's out of band management channels.
Right. And that's speaking of, before we call on Mr. Bodie to tell us about what he's doing this weekend, because I think we're going to be fascinated by it. Wanted to mention hello, Dan Jenkins, who's on IRC. Michael, we were talking about those vacuum cleaners. Now all the iRobots are Wi-Fi connected, and I'm trying to figure out why and how to disconnect it, because it's just another point that somebody can get into your network. So the big advantage is now you have on your phone an app, and there's a button that says "Go to work" or something, and you can do it. There's absolutely no useful information there, except like the number of times it's gone. How many times did you wonder how many times somebody's vacuumed your house? I don't know. Anyway, it's crazy. And this is related because someone will probably want to manage that by, hopefully maybe the updates will be managed through the Wi-Fi. Otherwise, I can see no good reason for it to be on. James, do you have some plans over this weekend? I think you do, starting tomorrow.
I do, yes. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm off to Gatwick in order to be on an early morning flight from Gatwick to Orlando, Florida. And we know what's happening next week in Orlando, don't we? Yes, we do. It's Astricon, and this Astricon is going to be one of the biggest and probably most memorable. Will it be the last? Probably, possibly, undoubtedly not. Astricon.
It could be the last Astricon because it could become a something else con.
Rumacon.
Freakon.
FreakyCon, yeah. Freakon.
Yeah. Y'all get your freak on. That's right.
Yeah, but I have to say that David Duffett has surpassed himself this year. You just look at the quantity and quality of the speakers this time. It's going to be really, really good. And as with last year, it's not just Asterisk people who are going to be there. It's all the people who make up the open source VoIP and real-time communications ecosystem will be there as well. So thinking about all our friends from the Free Switch team who are now SignalWire. and the signal wire beta is now out and functioning, so that's good. Camera EDO, OpenSIPs, and all the other bits and pieces as well. Far too many to mention. They're all going to be there. So it's one of those shows that you just have to go to because everybody else is going to be there.
Well, I want to assume that anybody who's actually has any chance of going has already got their plans straightened out. Is there some last minute button you can push that will check you into a hotel and give you a flight at a reasonable cost starting now?
I've got no idea because I booked mine eons ago, but
Yeah.
I'm flying Gatwick to Orlando on Norwegian. Norwegian is an interesting airline in that they only fly one type of aircraft for the long haul, and they're the Boeing Dreamliners. And I have to say, I really do like the Dreamliners. I used to be a great aficionado of British Airways, but I've been weaned off British Airways, and I'm a fan of Norwegian because the Dreamliners are just such super aircraft. They're big, they're airy, they have more oxygen, more space, and you get off the other end feeling less knackered. Oh, and the other advantage, of course, is with their big new turbofan Rolls-Royce engines, they consume less fuel, so better for the planet, and they go faster, so you arrive there 30 minutes quicker.
And
So
all that lutefisk.
Yeah, and consuming something like 20 to 25% less fuel, which is almost unbelievable. This is why all of a sudden all the old jumbos are just disappearing because they just cost too much to run. So there we are. Another bit of news here. I don't know whether you've noticed that news announcement came out but a number of minutes ago, announcing that the acquisition of Compute Int, the pioneers in decentralized mesh computing, has been bought by Magic Leap. Now, we know who's behind Compute Inc., don't we?
It's our friend Chris.
Yeah, it's Chris Matthew.
Yeah, it's dear old Chris Matthew.
And Magic Leap, are they still around? That's a name from the past.
Yeah. So is that a good thing? How many exits is that Chris has done now? It must be.
It's almost annually, isn't it?
Well, yeah. He knows what he's doing, that chap. I suppose it means he'll be out buying yet more knackered old Indian motorbikes, doesn't it?
Mm.
And more moustache products. Where will he go next, I wonder?
Presumably at Magic Leap, he'll be hanging around and doing some stuff for a spell.
Well, yeah, I suppose he'll be golden manacled for at least a year or so. But I don't know how he manages to do it. And every time he starts up the biggest, greatest new thing, and then within a year flogs it to somebody.
I got him to come talk to us way back when he was doing that thing called Twellophone.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes,
and
remember
that? And that was 100 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. What happened to Twellophone, I wonder?
Twellophone went away. That Twellophone kind of died off, but he morphed some of the ideas into something else. Actually, I think some of it became sort of the part of the idea of distributed identity thing that he was working on that went into Compute.io. I think it was recycled.
Yeah, I think you're right. A lot of this stuff that he does just keeps on reappearing, but with the next iteration, it gets better and better with each iteration, and changes its name. So, if he's exiting, it's probably a good excuse to have him on again and see what he's up to, and what the plans are. And this thing here tells me that I did sign up for Computes, but I can't remember ever doing it. I can't remember what it does either. But that's not surprising.
I wonder what Magic Leap is going to do with it. Yes.
Yeah, what does Magic Leap do these days? They have a product called Magic Leap 1 Creator Edition. Is that a pair of reality goggles?
Yeah, AR goggles.
Built for humans, not robots. Inspired by human physiology, it makes the unreal feel real. And this is only the beginning. Bam, bam, bam. Yeah. To be perfectly honest, it looks like a pair of bottoms out of bottles in a plastic frame. And looking at this, it says spatial audio and has a prescription insert. Yeah, magic one leap.
Yeah, so he's going into the VR, AR kind of space then.
Yeah, perhaps. Anyway.
Suzanne.
That was short-lived. That was a quick divert into a back end, wasn't it?
Whoa, Suzanne Bowen that said a nice.
Oh, the lovely Suzanne. Is Suzanne going to be at Astracon?
I'm going to ask her, but I
believe she is.
Send her a link to come and join us if she wants to here.
Yeah, is she on the
Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter.
Including on Twitter.
If Dan Jenkins is on ZipDX, we ought to have him on here because he's always entertaining.
Welcome to come on if he wants to.
Who is on ZipDX? I don't know. Let's find out.
Well, he's listening somehow. So Dan, you got to hang out in the dirt.
I haven't seen any reaction or anything from him ever since you rather slyly posted a picture of the Chalk Mobile
cell
on my kidney, which actually had a ComCom sticker on there.
Yeah.
I forgot to take it off before we put it on chimney.
Okay. I figured it was something silly.
It's a bit of covert.
What I said was that people were fleeing from your home after seeing the dangerous demo.
No, they were all coming in.
Oh, well, you couldn't tell.
With the minister and his minder.
Vicar. Wasn't the vicar? Vicar.
In fact, I saw the minister again yesterday at a brilliant.
Oh, the minister, not the vicar, the minister.
Yeah, there was. I went to an event yesterday from the local enterprise partnership, and they're a government-sponsored body who support R&D and things like that. And one of the keynotes was from a chap called Gilo, who, as a youngster, decided he wanted to fly, and he got himself one of these parachute things with a fan on the back, and he got one of those, and he flew around all over the place. And he thought, this is great, but I want to make it better. And he started off by making long-range fuel tanks for them. But then he started importing Japanese engines, because the engines are the crucial bit in all of this. And then the supply dried up. So he started making his own engines. And to cut a long story short, he expanded the business. He struck. Oh, here's Dan. Excellent.
Hold on.
Hello, Dan. And then Gilo ended up doing this stunt with Bear Grylls, the ex-SAS man, where they went and flew these paragliders over Mount Everest, which is a bit of an achievement, I think. And he was talking about when he was doing his training flights over Salisbury Plain, and he went up through the clouds, through the ice and snow and everything, popped out the top of the cloud and found himself coming face head on with an EasyJet 737 or whatever it is. So I don't know who was more surprised, Gilo or the crew of the EasyJet plane, because when you're up at 25,000 feet, you don't expect to see a guy with a parachute with a fan on his back, do you?
Yeah.
Anyway, he produced all these new engines, and he's got a whole load of offshoots now. And he's making lots of money because the latest engine is a rotary engine, which produces lots of power. It's super reliable because of the number of moving parts. But key to this is that it doesn't vibrate. And so all of a sudden, he's been inundated with orders from people who are building drones with sensor platforms, Because one of the problems with a drone is if you've got a motor that vibrates away, a bit like Dan's laptop, it tends to destroy things, and your sensors don't work. So if you have a vibration-free motor, particularly one that operates really well at high altitudes, it's the winner. So all of a sudden, all of US DoD things all seem to be using Zylo's engines. So there. And they're made in a barn in this part of Wiltshire. And nobody ever knew it. So there we are. Hello, Dan. How pleasant to see you.
Hello, James. How are you?
I'm well. You've had your hair cut. You must be going to Astricon.
I am going to Astricon.
When are you flying?
I am flying tomorrow.
Okay. And tell me, have you had time to prepare a little demonstration?
David Duckett might be watching. So, of course, I've got my demo for my talk completely and utterly buttoned up.
Good answer. But
anything else? Anything else? No, not quite. We shall see when I get there.
I know these things are normally concocted at the very last moment.
I was ill last week. I ended up getting food poisoning, which pretty much took me out for the whole week. And then this week I've had laptop issues. So I am well behind on everything. I was visiting a venue for potential ComCon next year last week, and managed to get food poisoning somewhere along the lines.
That's not a good sign with respect to that venue.
Well, yeah, I can't. This is the thing. I can't put my finger on where I got food poisoning because obviously I ate at service stations and everything else. So, yeah, well, I would hope it wasn't the venue that I was at.
Okay. Anyway, going back to Dangerous Demos, I have to read you a list of the prizes for Dangerous Demos because this is the first Dangerous Demos in a long while that the Telec Research lead crystal trophies are not going to be presented. Instead, we have got an amazing pile of swag to be won. So, for the most entertaining demo, there's a pixel.
Is Dangerous Demos in conjunction with anyone, James?
Oh yeah, I'm afraid it is. It's a bit commercial, but are we allowed to say who's doing the sponsoring?
I would imagine so.
Well, it's Cloudonics, Digium, and Sangoma, who now own, are providing prizes. Oh, and I'm providing a prize.
Okay.
A very, very special prize, which we all look forward to.
So what are the, now that I've interrupted you, what are the prizes?
So the most entertaining is a Pixel 2 phone, which is a pretty good prize in
itself.
That's pretty good. It's pretty good. We've got what's the Microsoft tablet with the keyboard?
The Surface 2.
Microsoft Surface. We've got one of those.
Nice.
For Apple fans, we've got an iPad. There's an Apple AirPod, again for Apple fans, and a couple of Arduino developer kits as well. But they're big RD. They're not these popsy little Chinese $25 ones. These are like a $250 Arduino developer kit with everything you could possibly dream. It's a sort of prize that you would win, actually, I think, because nobody else would actually use half the stuff, but you probably would.
Yeah, and I'm full of audio devices, and I've got a Pixel tablet that I haven't really used very much. So yeah, they would actually be useful.
Yeah, so there are what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 good exclusives. Yeah, no, they're not bad, are they? So and with your previous track record, Dan, I would say you're probably in with a pretty fair shout. At least again.
The only year that I won, hold on, I don't know whether or not you can see the mess that is my office. But the only year that I won was where I brought like 8 or 9 different devices. I'm not doing that this year.
It wasn't 8 or 9. It was 50 devices. How many things can I interface into Asterisk in 3 minutes?
It was, and it worked.
And it was
very well.
And you even had a drone as well.
We even had a drone,
which didn't kill anybody.
It did land very weirdly, from what I remember, and I forgot about it. And Chris, who you were talking about earlier, rescued it for me and gave it back to me the next day.
Very, very good of him. Anyway, I'm hoping to see a replay or a re-emergence of Moshe's Dial 1 to Detonate demo, which obviously will be done remotely because you can't actually blow things up on site. So I'm just dying to do that one. I just want to blow something up.
I'm looking to Astricon, like all of Astricon this year. Sangoma news is very interesting. Dangerous demos. We've got DevCon on the Tuesday. That'll be.
What about the Signal stuff? Have you had a chance to play with the Signal World beta yet?
No. When do I get to play with anything? This is the issue. Yeah.
Neither do I. That makes 2 of us.
Yeah, I've got access to it. I just haven't got around to doing anything with it. It's a shame, but yeah, no. Astricon will be very, very interesting.
Yeah, there's some really, really clever voice bot technology based on Asterisk being shown off there. What are they? The Giuseppe? Is it not Giuseppe? But the Italians anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Who for the second year on the run have the misfortune of having me moderate their talk. That's unlucky, isn't it?
Are you talking about Lorenzo and company?
No, not Lorenzo. It's a different bunch of. They're from northern Torino, and I can't remember names these days. But I'll look it up in a moment. But they've got some really, really clever voice bot technology, which reacts to you and talks to you as if you're as if it's a real person. And bizarrely enough, I had one of those call me up today. It goes, "Hi, I'm Samantha Watson here. Now, about this accident you had the other day." And I just went, boop. Yeah, but it was clearly a robot because of the pauses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're quite common now.
Yeah. A bit of a pain, but it's amazing what you can do with these things. So, anyway, what else is going on? Have we come to an impact?
I beg your pardon. I have to say, I wasn't at any point during this year thinking about Astricon, but now that Sangoma and Digium are one, I thought this one would be really interesting to attend, and I'm kind of regretting that I'm not doing so.
Yes, I think it's going to be interesting. The flavour is going to be different, I think. And we need to wait and find out if the streams, for those people who are not going, if the streams are being streamed.
I know.
Don't know.
I know that one of them is the keynote stuff is being streamed.
Oh yeah, of course, keynotes. And who's giving the keynotes this time? Well, we know one person who's giving the keynote, don't we?
Woodhead Simon 1.
Yeah, our good old friend Simon Woodhead, a jolly nice chap, and he does a reasonably good speech, doesn't he? On a good day.
And I know enough to know that the talk will be really good.
Well, his talks are always immaculately well prepared, and if he's keynoting, undoubtedly he will have put days of effort into it.
And not just turned up and written a demo and talk the day before like I end up doing these days.
Yeah, but you're
everybody has a different MO. Everybody does it differently.
And then other people that I definitely want to see. I want to go and see Evan McGee because he's always amusing, and the stuff that he comes out with is absolutely brilliant. So Evan McGee is now the CTO of Signalwire. Trying to work out. And how would you like to be CTO of an organization which has Anthony Minnesala as the CEO? It's a little bit scary, isn't it?
Bit daunting, yeah.
Yeah, you can't exactly pull the tech card on the CEO if he's Anthony Minnesala. Anyway, who else have we got? Yeah, dear old Alex Balashov. Man, why use one word when you can use 20?
But that's a little unfair. Alex is a clever bloke, and his use of language is very good.
It is. His English is better than my English.
Indeed.
And considering he's Armenian, that's pretty good. He has a brain the size of a planet. Love him to bits. Oh yes, so there's this chap called Dan Jenkins who's doing web VR, web RTC, and Asterisk.
That's the one, apparently.
So Dan, is that your new Chromebook that you're on, the Chromebook Pixel, the Pixel Book or whatever?
No, I'm actually on my new MacBook Pro.
Oh, you ended up buying one despite the keyboard.
So I've got one that's a year old, with the new keyboard that's very clackety, and then the new one has a nicer keyboard. So I ended up buying a new one for the slightly less clackety keyboard, and on the Pixelbook front, I tried coding on it, and I just can't get over this can't get over the American enter key. Like, it's completely and utterly wrong.
How's that?
Because it's a different shape. It's a different shape to the UK. The UK has like an upside down L.
Oh, the big one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so for me, like, just typing on it is just too strange. So I got myself a new MacBook Pro instead.
What more tools?
You should send me that Pixel Book then. I will take it off your hands.
It is too handy in other ways to do that.
I appreciate that. I'm lamenting the fact that my first gen Chromebook Pixel is no longer receiving updates, so too old.
According to Mashable, Facebook, Apple confirmed they were targets of Supermicro malware attack.
So everyone else is just lying when they say that they're not.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, they
don't. It's not so much lying. They may not be that competent, right? They may not be that down in the weeds of their hardware.
That, or yeah, they have to deny it because of the industries that they're in, etc.
Apparently, they're not denying it. That's the point.
Well, no, so Facebook, etc. aren't, but what is it? Apple's have said, and a couple of other,
and Amazon with respect to ASUP, if they're providing DoD services, then they may have their hands tied.
They just have to say, no, we weren't, even though they know full well that they were.
They say,
and everyone else knows that they were as well.
They say they were.
Oh, Apple. Oh, right, okay. Amazon definitely said no.
Mashable, which, again, how
yeah,
was that? I don't know.
Yeah, on the subject of hack attacks and things like that, did you see the story about the Russian GRU officers who were arrested by the Dutch security services trying to hack into the OSCE? This is the nerve agent analysis thing.
Yeah, I saw this.
So 4 of them turned up from Moscow on diplomatic passports, hired a car, and then went and parked outside the headquarters with a boot full of Wi-Fi hacking equipment, which is quite amusing. Good old Kali Linux. Yeah, things like, he said, reaching up here. What have I done with it? Wi-Fi hacking equipment. Can't find my Wi-Fi. Yeah, here we go. This is the de facto standard. This bit of kit, which you can't see. You know what this is? It's an alpha. Long range dual band Wi-Fi, high power, and you can clip it onto anything, and it's incredibly good. Good bit of kit when coupled with good old Kali Linux.
Whose chipset inside that? Whose radios?
You mean whose chip?
Yeah.
I don't know, but apparently it's the right one. It's the best one that you can do all kinds of non-standard modes of operation.
Flexible.
On that note,
Anyway.
I have to disappear. Thank you very much for your ComCon sticker on your thing, James.
Well, it's in preparation for next year, just to.
And
Is
and
the
yeah,
logo next year, or is it going to be a new logo?
it'll be the same logo next year. Actually, no, I should stop saying if. I've now reached my magical number.
Yes, yeah, you must stop teasing people. You've got to be more.
I've now reached my magical number that I wanted to be able to run it. So it will 99% be happening again. I just need to find somewhere to do it.
So is the venue are you going to go for a slightly bigger venue or different? The venue wasn't that bad actually.
It wasn't bad at all, James.
The venue was excellent, frankly.
But that hotel I've got 6% battery, so I need to make this quick. That hotel only has 127 bedrooms total. So there's no room to expand. There's no room to get some more people. Not that I'd ever want it to grow too big, because that takes away the point of the whole conference, of everyone talking to one another. So I'm looking at venues that can support 150 to 200 people. And I'd never go more than 200. So yeah, that's what I'm looking for. And
the ambiance of the place is extremely important. The fact that it was such a beautiful place,
right,
added a huge amount to it.
And I found one place.
And while you have just a minute left, I don't know that you caught this earlier conversation before you joined, but Chris Matthew just sold Computes.io to Magic Leap. So you need to talk to him, because you're doing this whole VR thing now, and by the time we roll around to next ComCon, I would expect there to be the fruits of some great relationship there.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And can you make sure that when you choose a location, make sure there's absolutely no mobile coverage there? And this time, we will do the mobile network properly, because we've got it working now.
Okay.
And we might
I can't promise the no network thing.
Do a workshop, but please don't give us more than about half an hour, please, because it's murder.
I'm not going to get on to the workshop.
I mean,
no, James has problems speaking for more than half an hour in a straight run, as you might have noticed.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
See you guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Yeah,
probably not a bad place to break off, unless anybody has any new business.
Yeah, there's something. Oh yeah, something else that happened to be last week that you might be interested to know. Were you aware that radio amateurs have got a complete Class A IPv4 addressing space? Were you aware of that?
No.
44 x.x.x.
I did post about that.
That has a considerable dollar value.
It certainly does, and all of a sudden, it's all taking off. It was originally got in the days of AX25 packet radio, where it's all 1200 baud. The things were so slow, you could actually learn about the protocols just by watching the packets being exchanged, and you got a feel for how the HDLC stuff worked, and it was hugely useful in my early days. But things have moved on now, and so radio amateurs now are putting in like gigabit links over 50 to 100 kilometers, using bits of kit like the Ubiquity and MikroTik stuff, which incidentally, both of those products cover a much wider frequency range than the standard license-free bands, and they operate at higher powers as well.
Here's the Ars Technica article that I posted earlier in the week, and although with the nice, when everything else fails, amateur radio will still be there and thriving. And then down here hidden, if this is maybe not where you got this, but down here hidden someplace is, oops, I saw it.
Hamnet, European Hamnet. That's the one.
Oh, is that what that is? Okay.
Yeah, just check out Hamnet.
16 million IPv4 addresses, believe it or not. Independent.
Yeah,
there you go.
And you know what? I've just got a /18 assigned to me. A /18. That's insane. I only said to the local UK coordinator, I want to run a bit of BGP4, BGP, and so he went, "Ooh, that's a bit heavy duty. I'm going to have to escalate that up to the States." And before I knew it, I had a /17. How insane is that?
Insane indeed.
Totally sheer lunacy. But
lunacy.
Yeah, we've got to work out what we're going to do with it. And so Andy is under the cosh now to take his radio amateurs exam.
I just got to find somewhere to do it, that's all.
Yeah, and the other thing, the extension of that is then I want to run amateur 4G mobile phones, because I think I found a way of doing it. There's some very, very clever stuff in this Hamnet stuff, but how you identify, put your call sign in there, and how you, because with the old packet radio stuff, you had to every, I don't know, 15 minutes, you had to identify your call sign in Morse codes, just in case you were interfering with something. But of course, that putting a CW identifier onto a gigabit per second point-to-point link really is not a very good idea. It's not very clever. So there are other ways of doing it, which are very clever. And so we can take the same concept and put that into LTE. And so we'll be in a situation where radio amateurs can wander around with their own cellular telephony system, which is linked, backhauled over Hamnet with their gigabit links. Talk about covert comms. It's just so exciting. And then when the disaster happens, then you just open it up so that the local population can access it to make emergency calls and limited service calls, because of course the amateur license forbids you to run any kind of proper service. But during a disaster, if you think about it, that a bit of kit that all the citizens carry is a mobile phone, a cellular phone. And if you want to communicate or offer a service to the citizens, it's going to be a cellular mobile system, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Isn't it? Because citizens don't go around with HF receivers anymore, shortwave receivers, like in the old days. And so they have cell phones. So if you want to communicate with citizens, that's how you do it. You put up your own private cellular network.
Any other new business? Any old business besides James?
Going twice. Yeah, I'm old business. Knackered old business.
Okay. Well, James is tired. I'm tired. What is the Andy? What are you going to say?
What was I going to say? I just got accosted by a certain Mr. Rice. He's hiding in the dark, fighting a migraine, apparently, so he's not going to come and join us.
Okay, I saw his name up there. I was just wondering the cumulative experience of the 4 people here. Let's see, we've got James, that's 80 plus my 71 plus, all right, now.
Were you trying to add up ages? You got 80.